Welcome to Victims and Villains. If you guys are new to our content, Victims and Villains creates content like what you're watching right now, simply to educate and engage individuals like yourselves on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. My name is Captain Nostalgia. I am a writer, podcaster, and the film festival director for our film festival called Horrific Hope. If you guys would like information including this year's lineups, where to get tickets, more information about our sponsors, click the links in the descriptions below. Also, you guys can check out our podcast, including our Nicolas Cage podcast, That's High Praise, of which I also co-host. Like information on this year's lineup for the festival, more information about our sponsors, where to get tickets, and much more, you guys can click the links in the descriptions below, where you guys will also find links to podcasts, including our Nicolas Cage podcast, That's High Praise, a Nicolas Cage podcast, more movie reviews like this, and links to our social media, Patreon, and most importantly, our mental health resource library. Alright, so in this episode, we're going to be lifting up the unbearable weight of massive talent. This bromantic comedy / action spy thriller, Nicolas Cage plays a fictionalized version of himself that essentially is very mirroring real life of where Nicolas Cage was this time 10 years ago, nearing bankruptcy and just trying to take on multiple different projects. A desperate attempt to kind of pay off his bills and kind of reclaim his stick in Hollywood, what he essentially does is he ends up renting himself out to a birthday party thrown by Pedro Pascal, and in the midst gets involved with the CIA and trying to take down a drug cartel. This movie is absolutely like a bonkers. What I've just described to you is the plot of the film. I haven't even begun to talk about the bromance between Pascal and Cage, let alone the very commentary on how we've perceived Nicolas Cage's career in the last decade of him going from failing box office leading man to B-movie star to rising again. As a Nicolas Cage fan and also a Nicolas Cage podcast host, what I love about this movie is that this movie is very self-aware. Like, it does meta to where it's never like it's too over the top, but it has just enough finesse to really be conscious of the world it lives in and also make fun of it at the same time. I've seen those Nicolas Cage memes and parodies and GIFs that go around. This movie, what I love about it so much is the fact that it actually is telling this story almost autobiographical while also simultaneously being a parody of its central protagonist at the same time. And this is a movie that only Nicolas Cage could do. That's personally what one of the things that is just so admirable about this movie is that this is a Nicolas Cage movie through and through. Like, I'll talk a little bit later about Nicolas Cage's arc throughout the course of this in the mental health moment of it, but just saying this right now, like, this kind of feels like Nicolas Cage is acknowledging the past of where he's been in the last 10 to 15 years in terms of being an actor and what that has meant for his career, but also at the same time what that has meant for his place amongst pop culture and internet culture. The movie's really smart, it's really witty, and it's actually a lot of fun. So we all have those movies that we go to when it's time for comfort. Me, my ultimate comfort movie is Mean Girls. For some of you, it might be something completely different, but when I say comfort movie, what I'm specifically talking about are movies that you can turn on whether you're in a good mood or you need to be in a good mood. No matter how many times you watch it and you see it, you just can't help but just watch the entire thing with a smile on your face, quoting along to every aspect of the character interactions and comedy. And it might be a little bit too early to say that, but Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent definitely has that in spades. Not only is this a cult movie, in the making, but also at the same time, I feel like this might be the definitive comfort movie of 2022, and I could definitely see it being a comfort movie, not only for myself, but other Nicolas Cage fans and enthusiasts moving forward. What's also really great about this movie is that I will also say tremendously well done. The chemistry between Cage and Pascal is impeccable. Like, both actors give it their all in this and deliver some of their best work that they've done in years. But as their scenes together and the formation of their camaraderie and ultimately where it goes throughout the duration of the film, like, this is just absolutely just like, this feels like a throwback to like the buddy comedies you got in the 80s and the early 90s. And with this relationship, there's a whole lot of stuff that is, I will say, absolutely, you're gonna be taken on a thrill ride, and you're gonna have those twists and turns along the way. This movie really works as a romantic comedy. Like, I love the chemistry between Pascal and Cage. I think it's incredible, and it's honestly one of the most fascinating on-set duos I've seen this year. Then on the flip side, you have this like spy thriller comedy that they're trying to mesh in, where Pedro's character is essentially the head of this giant drug cartel. And that's honestly what kind of feels like a forced angle into this movie. This movie's not meta enough. There's actually a subplot where Pascal and Cage are working on a film together, and they're talking about adding an element into their own in-universe movie about a kidnapping and kind of like drug cartels. And that to me just couldn't be more fitting, because it just feels incredibly forced. The subplot that exists between Ike Barinholtz and Tiffany Haddish, it feels so incredibly forced. Like, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring purpose to the celebration of Nicolas Cage not just being like another like being John Malkovich movie, but actually having some quote unquote depth. Unfortunately, in terms of the actual scope of what this film is trying to do along with everything else, those elements of the movie just fall flat. But I'm gonna say, despite those elements, this movie has an immense amount of heart. Its humor is just one of the funniest films of the year, if not currently the funniest film. But also on top of that, this movie just has great pacing, and it's just an all-around fun time. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 4 out of 5, and if you guys listen to our Nicolas Cage podcast, I am going to give my own rating just a little bit earlier than our spoiler episode that will be released next week. But I am going to go out on a limb and say that The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is massively worthy of high praise. If you guys have seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, let me know in the comments below what you guys thought about it. If you guys haven't, you guys just kind of came across this video, hello. What is your favorite Nicolas Cage movie? Drop them in the comments below. Let's talk about mental health. If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health throughout the film we're talking about and expand upon it for just a few moments in hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. As I said, this movie is kind of like a fictionalized version of what Nicolas Cage, what I imagine he actually is as an actor. Kind of portray him to be this guy that is very narcissistic in the beginning, the first act of the movie, where he's very focused on himself. If someone else is talking about something else that it does not relate to him, he brings the conversation right back to him. His daughter has a birthday party that he curates so every eye in the crowd is focusing and fixated on him. And as the movie kind of goes on and on, he's starting to understand and starting to learn that the world through his eyes isn't this glamorous Hollywood version of himself, but his decisions have actually had effects on the people that he cares about, whether it's him and his wife currently going through a divorce, or him alienating his daughter. On top of that, his career is kind of in this weird sinkhole. While this film does focus a lot on mental health and relational aspects, one of the things that I really felt like I wanted to focus on for the purpose of this review, and we'll again expand upon a lot more of these themes in the episode we're going to be putting out next week. But sometimes our self-centered or narcissistic tendencies have a tendency to hurt the mental health of those around us. That we actually hold near and dear to us may have actually been hurt or affected by our tendencies to be toxic individuals, simply because we just want to focus on what we love and focus on what we're passionate about. And I just really want to step back from that for a second and just encourage you to listen. Take an interest in what others are interested in. Sometimes it's these little moments that have great impacts. We talk about this quite frequently, but for every one successful suicide that occurs, there are 25 more that are being attempted. There's 25 people that feel like they're not heard or they're not validated. And that's not to mention those statistics that actually go through and complete the act of suicide. So consider your words, consider your actions, and understand that they have great consequences. You might not see it in the moment, but they might lay foundations for future heartbreak. That's it. That's all I got. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and enjoy the unbearable weight of massive talent.